abandon their initial position, cut all telephone lines and moved a few miles back to a fortified position. Their mission is to relay orders to Colonel Mackenzie of the 2nd Devons to avoid making the mistake of attacking the enemy and leading 2 battalions into a massacre. The colonel is convinced that he has the Germans on the run, but the Germans make a strategic retreat to bait the English into a trap. In a heartbeat, Tom sets out to find the Devons. William tries to talk sense into Tom to wait until sundown at least, they wouldn't be seen easily. But with 1,600 lives on the line, including Tom's older brother, time is of the essence. They navigate their way through the vast trenches until they reach the front line to look for the Yorks, a company handling the front. Since York's commander died a couple of nights back, Lieutenant Leslie receives the orders and shows the boys where to cross in no man's land. The 2 friends then pop up in the trenches and cross the ominous and desolate killing field. So far, they haven't met any enemy fire, but they still proceed with caution. Tom and William are halfway through, and a couple of planes pass by. Afterward, they continue until they reach the German side of the trenches. Turns out, the general's intel was correct. The Germans are gone. The duo scours through the trenches, continues their mission, and stumbles upon the enemy underground barracks. They were both amazed that the Germans had beds while they slept in the mud. They then discover a bunch of canned goods, but good thing, William notices that there's a tripwire. They try to be cautious, but a rat falls down suddenly, activates the tripwire, and blows up the place. Tom is sent flying, and as soon as he recovers, he looks for his pal under the rubbles. The whole area is coming down. William manages to survive the explosion but can't see due to the dust in his eyes. Tom guides his pal in jumping through a gap until they see the light at the end of the tunnel and make their way out. They reach the German artillery line and fire a flare to signal the troops on their side that the Germans are gone. Soon, the 2 reach an abandoned farmhouse and check out the area for any signs of enemies. William comes across a fresh bucket of milk and proceeds to refill his canteen. Later, they hear some engines roaring. It's a dogfight. 2 English planes versus 1 German. Tom and William watch the aerial combat when the German plane unexpectedly crashes on the farm. Afterward, they help the enemy pilot get out of the burning plane and into safety. With the pilot's burn wounds, William gets water from the nearby pump. The enemy pilot takes the opportunity to stab Tom in the stomach. William rushes over, shoots the pilot dead, and goes to Tom to try and stop the bleeding. But it's useless, Tom is losing too much blood. Knowing that his friend is on his last legs, William promises to continue the mission and find Tom's older brother. Not soon after, Tom breathes his last. William then takes his dog tag, rings, and letters. Moments later, a few friendlies show up and help William with the body. An officer then offers a distraught William a ride since their whole company will pass by near a coast. After a few minutes, the truck gets stuck in the mud. William orders everyone in the truck to get out and help push the truck. They successfully push the truck off the mud and continue their journey. Fate wasn't making it easy for William. The bridge got destroyed, and so the whole company had to reroute for another 6 miles. William gets off the truck to continue on foot with little time left. Before he departs, the officer warns William to have witnesses before facing and giving the order to Colonel Mackenzie. Later, William crosses the river through the destroyed bridge. When he gets to the edge of the broken-down bridge, he hastily jumps across after being fired upon. He makes it across but continues to take cover from the shooter. William figures that the enemy is by the house ruins. He takes a gamble and tries to shoot back. At first, he misses, but he hits the enemy the second time. He then enters the house and cautiously makes his way up to eliminate the threat. As soon as William opens the door, he pulls the trigger. He kills the enemy, but William gets shot in the helmet and falls down the stairs. Evening came, and William woke up after passing out. Enemy flares light up the dark ruins, and William continues with his mission. He ends up near a building on fire. Then a man's silhouette emerges, starts running towards him, and starts firing at William. Fortunately, the enemy missed. William then runs away and hides in a dark basement. He comes across a French woman in the basement and assures her that he's not the enemy. With a bit of French vocabulary in his arsenal, he was able to verify that he was in Acoust and the direction of his mission after asking her. Afterward, he gets dizzy and takes a sit. The French woman then approaches him and puts a cloth on the wound. He later finds out that she's hiding with a baby girl. William gets his bag, unpacks all the food he has with him, and offers it to them. But the French woman said that the baby couldn't eat food yet and needed milk. And as if by fate, William opens his canteen lid to let the woman smell it. It's milk. The same milk he gathered at the abandoned farm earlier. Afterward, William hears the tolls of a nearby clock and realizes that time is running short. William then leaves despite the Frenchwoman's pleas. William takes advantage of the darkness and navigates through the ruins. He then spots a drunk German soldier puking and decides to head to the side. Suddenly, another enemy soldier shows up. William immediately covers the enemy's mouth. As soon as William lets go, the soldier tries to warn his companions, and so, with no other choice, William chokes him to death. Afterward, the young Brit runs past the drunk soldier, who realizes late that he was an enemy. Another German trooper hears the commotion and goes after William. With 2 Germans in his tail, William runs for dear life and jumps towards the safety of the river. The currents are strong, and William struggles to stay afloat. Later, the strong current leads him to drop down a waterfall. He survives, and luckily, at that part of the river, the waters are relatively calm. Mentally and physically tired, he grabs hold of a log to stay afloat. After a while, he notices white petals falling like snow. Realizing that he's close to land, he gathers his strength and swims to land, passing by dozens of corpses along the way. After all he's been through, he couldn't help but cry out loud after making it back to land. William then hears a faint sound of men singing in the distance. He musters his strength and starts walking towards it. Soon, he sees hundreds of men gathering, making it easy, enjoying every second watching the singing recital of a lone performer. William sits down and joins his comrades. It might be their last to many, knowing full well that they'll initiate a fight soon. The scene is rather magical yet horrifying because many of the men will not see the sunset. It was like the calm before the storm. After the performance, the soldiers stood up and started moving out. It was then that some of the men sees William, drenched. They realize he wasn't part of their company and start asking him questions. With the bit of strength he has, he tries to tell them something. A soldier takes a knee to hear him out clearly. William is trying to say that he's trying to find the Devons, and the soldiers respond that they're it. Realizing that he finally reached the company he's been trying so hard to find, he asks to meet Colonel Mackenzie. He then pushes soldiers aside on the way to the colonel. Hundreds of soldiers in full gear with bayonets ready on their rifles prepare for the full-on assault. William sees an officer briefing his men and starts yelling out that the attack has been called off per the general's orders. The officer pushes him aside and tells him to talk to the captain. Clearly fatigued, William runs past the trenches with hundreds of soldiers ready to charge and NCOs briefing the men for the last time. He reaches the captain and tries to talk to him, but the officer loses his wits, crying. With no use talking to the captain, William continues to look for Colonel Mackenzie. At the same time, enemy shells then start hitting them. The brave young Brit gets info that the colonel is only about 300 yards away. Meanwhile, the troops of the 7th platoon of the 2nd Devons get ready to charge with only 30 seconds left. With the trenches cut off, William gets out of the trenches and into the killing field in hopes of reaching the colonel. The whistle then echoes throughout the trenches, marking the start of the attack. The soldiers shout as they head into their impending doom. William continues to sprint despite losing his balance a few times. Eventually, he reaches the other side of the trench and sees the colonel's dugout. 2 NCOs stops William from entering, and he tries to tell them that he is ordered. He forces his way in and shouts at the top of his lungs to stop the attack. The colonel looks back and asks who he is. William introduces himself and explains that the general and army command ordered the attack to stop and urged the colonel to read the letter. The colonel ignores him, but after William explains that the Germans have been planning this for months, it gets the colonel's attention. The colonel reads the letter and afterward gives the orders to stand down to the remaining troops. The major commends William for a job well done on the way out. As promised to his dear pal, William looks for Lieutenant Blake, his fallen friend's older brother. He got info that the lieutenant was part of the first wave and that, most likely, he's in the casualty clearing section behind the front lines. William follows the injured soldiers on the way to the back of the trenches. He soon arrives at the makeshift hospital. Hundreds of soldiers are on their backs, suffering from different injuries. William roams around and shouts for Lieutenant Blake. Meanwhile, medical officers tend to the wounded. Eventually, he finds the lieutenant alive and healthy. William calls his attention and introduces himself as part of the 8th Regiment.